What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a look at Week 18, the final week of the 2024/2025 NFL regular season. We have a 13-game slate here on DraftKings, 14 over on FanDuel, including this huge regular season finale between the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings that is going to determine the number one seed in the NFC throughout the playoffs. So we have a lot to talk about today. FanDuel, obviously, lineups are going to primarily focus on that primetime game. It's got a 55.5 point total. It's clearly the game with the best motivation on the slate. But on DraftKings, we obviously have a lot of different things to contend with because we don't have those plays as options here on the main slate. As always, my favorite play is the first play that we start with in these videos. And this week, it's going to be Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to be the most popular player at receiver on this slate on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So I would definitely put him in your low-risk lineups this week. He's 85 yards away from the 1,000-yard receiving yard plateau for the season, a mark that he has hit in every season of his career. Also has some contract incentives around getting to that number and around getting a couple more touchdowns that he's playing for that could net him up to an additional $450,000, which is not a ton of money to a guy like Mike Evans, but it's still money, guys. So he is motivated to get out there and make that happen here. So you want to get Mike Evans in your lineups this week. As always, like to go through spreads and totals in the betting markets to find out which running backs are going to be in positive game script situations this week. And Evans Bucks are the biggest favorite. They are 14-point home favorites against the New Orleans Saints this week. And that means Bucky Irving is going to be a great play at the running back position. When we look at the matchup here, the Saints are the second worst rush defense in the league, and they're roughly league average defending running backs in the passing game over the last couple of weeks. Rachaad White's role has completely evaporated. Last week, we weren't necessarily sure if that was going to continue, but we got confirmation once that game took place. So expect the Bucks to load up with Irving on the ground and Evans through the air. Important thing to remember here with Tampa Bay is they have to win this game to make sure that they make the playoffs next week. They need to win to clinch the NFC South here. So these guys are all safe plays. The second biggest favorite on this slate is the Denver Broncos facing the Kansas City Chiefs. And this game is going to be a little hairy, I think. On the Kansas City side, the Chiefs are resting their starters because they've already locked up the number one seed in the AFC. So Patrick Mahomes, Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce, likely DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. These guys are either not going to play at all or see extremely limited reps. That's why Denver is favored by 11 points here against Kansas City at home to close out the season. Denver is in a win-and-in spot. They win this game, and they are playing on Wild Card Weekend next week as the 7th seed in the NFC. Javonte Williams has been the running back that they use mostly in the passing game. We saw a huge amount of targets against the Chargers 2 weeks ago. Jaleel McLaughlin, when healthy, has been the one that has been getting the majority of the carries in recent weeks. But we also have Audric Estime to contend with in the backfield. So I would expect Estime and McLaughlin to split the bulk of the carries against Kansas City's defense. The Chiefs are a top 10 rush defense this season, but with them resting players, things could go a little sideways here. Not necessarily looking to play any of these guys in low-risk contests here in Week 18. All high-risk viable, though, with Denver being a huge favorite here in Week 18. The Green Bay Packers are favored by 10.5 points this week in their matchup with the Chicago Bears. That means Josh Jacobs is in a good position to be used in high-risk contests. Green Bay not going to be super popular on this slate because they are a wild card team no matter what next week. There are some situations where they could be either the 6th seed or the 7th seed depending on what happens with them and the Commanders here. But Jacobs not projecting to be super, super popular. So just keep that in mind here. Got a good matchup, though. The Bears are the 3rd worst rush defense in the league and 19th defending running backs in the passing game this season. Bijan Robinson from the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta has a puncher's chance at a playoff spot. They need to win here, and they need the Bucks to lose to the Saints. Not sure that's going to happen, but the Falcons are going to play like that's going to happen because it's really their only hope to get there. So expect Bijan, expect all the receivers, expect Michael Penix, all these guys to stay out there for Atlanta against Carolina for the bulk of this game. Bijan's going to be one of the most popular plays on this slate because the Panthers have been the worst rush defense in the NFL this season, and they are below average defending running backs in the passing game. The Seattle Seahawks got eliminated last week when the Rams clinched the NFC West. However, they are favored against the Rams here because the Rams are going to be resting all of their starters here on Sunday afternoon. Kenneth Walker III was placed on injured reserve, so that means to close out the season, Zach Charbonnet will be the number one running back for the Seahawks. Seattle's favored by 6 points here on the road. The Rams are the 20th ranked rush defense on the season and 24th defending running backs in the passing game. And again, they're going to be resting some of their starters here. So Charbonnet is going to be facing potentially some backups as well, which should boost his projections a little bit here. A solid high-risk play, I would say, on this slate, given the context of what the Rams are doing and the touches that should be allocated to him in the backfield here. Finally, the Commanders are favored by 6 points against the Dallas Cowboys this Sunday to close out their regular season. Austin Eckler is questionable. He could potentially be activated from injured reserve, but he hasn't really been the primary tailback all year when Brian Robinson is available. We're expecting at least to begin the game, the Commander starters will play against the Cowboys here as they get ready to go into the playoffs next weekend. Cowboys are the fourth worst rush defense in the league, and they are slightly above average defending running backs in the passing game. Robinson at a modest price is a pretty good high-risk play on both sites. Over on FanDuel, most popular player is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs and the Lions are at home against the Vikings here to close out the regular season. Gibbs has been the only player in the NFL that has gone over 70 scrimmage yards in every game this season. Gibbs has a tough matchup here. The Vikings are the third best rush defense in their top 10 defending running backs in the passing game. But we have the highest total game on the slate, and we have an opportunity to play a running back that's guaranteed to have a pretty high floor of touches. David Montgomery is out again with his knee injury, and Craig Reynolds is also questionable. So we're only expecting, if Reynolds sits, Jermar Jefferson to be the backup for Gibbs here, which should increase his playing time here in a must-win game for the Detroit Lions. So you definitely want to include Gibbs in your FanDuel lineups this week. And we also have a couple of other backup running backs that are going to be very popular this week. Arizona is facing the 49ers here at home to close out the regular season. James Conner was placed on injured reserve this week, so he will not be playing. Michael Carter is going to be the starter here. We saw him get a decent amount of work against the Rams last week when Conner exited that game with an injury. So we're expecting Carter to take over the backfield here with both Conner and Trey Benson out. Michael Carter just $4,700 here on DraftKings, $5,800 over on FanDuel, so he's going to be very popular here in a good matchup. The 49ers 25th defending the rush this year, slightly above average defending running backs in the passing game. Carter used to be the starting running back for the Jets for a little bit before they drafted Breece Hall, so we know that he's capable of handling the workload as well. Another running back in a good spot here, Will Shipley. Shipley has missed the last couple of games for the Eagles with a concussion, but he has been a full participant in practice to close out the week here. And the Eagles told us that they're going to be resting all of their starters in anticipation of their home game next weekend to begin the NFC playoffs. Shipley has been touted by basically the coaching staff, a lot of the beat writers, as the guy to watch in this game. Saquon will not be playing, so it's probably going to be Shipley and Kenneth Gainwell. And with Gainwell having a valuable third down RB2 role when the Eagles play their starters, look to Shipley to be the guy that steps into the larger role here. 4,600 here on DraftKings, just 4,100 over on FanDuel. He'll be very popular this week. Still needs to clear concussion protocol, so we're waiting on that news, but the expectation is that he will clear and that he will be available for us to play on Sunday. The New York Giants are league average defending running backs this year, and they are 26th in the league defending running backs in the passing game. So if Shipley gets bell cow volume here at this price, it's going to be an awesome play, I would say, for all of your contest types here in Week 18. That's a mouthful. That's a lot of different running backs that you can play here based off a rest or positive game script situations that we anticipate. Some of the other rest spots to be aware of here, the Buffalo Bills, they have told us that they are going to start Josh Allen and some of the other offensive starters here. Josh Allen's looking to keep his consecutive start streak in the regular season alive, but we're expecting Buffalo to pull him relatively quickly against the Patriots in a meaningless game. The Bills have already locked up the number 2 seed, so we're treating Buffalo starters as if they're not playing, even though they're probably going to be active to begin the game here. Talked about Kansas City resting, talked about Philadelphia resting, talked about the Rams resting. I think we're pretty much reasonably caught up on that front. So let's talk about some other low-risk plays on this slate. At receiver behind Mike Evans, we're expecting Jawan Jennings to be extremely popular from the 49ers. Deebo Samuel is going to be out this week. Jennings also becomes a really nice bring back in this Cardinals and 49ers game, which is projecting to be pretty popular for high-risk contests this week. But at his low price tag here of $5,800 on DraftKings, I believe $6,500 over, or $6,800, over on FanDuel, Jennings is going to be in a ton of low-risk lineups this week. The tight end position with the running back values, you can get up to either Brock Bowers from the Raiders or Trey McBride from the Arizona Cardinals at their slate high price tags at the position. They're the only guys that we're projecting for 9+ targets. They have been target hogs all season long. But I think what we want to think about for low risk contests every single week, but especially here in week 18, is maximizing opportunity to get touches into our lineups. A high target floor at tight end is easily attainable in our low risk lineups this week. So I think we definitely want to make sure we include that. So we can get Trey McBride into our lineups here in low risk contests. At quarterback, very different depending on whether you are on DraftKings or FanDuel. On FanDuel, since you have access to Goff and Darnold, that's who everyone's mostly going to play. There's one other quarterback who's going to be the most popular player in low-risk contests on DraftKings, and that's going to be San Francisco's starting quarterback, Josh Dobbs. Dobbs has some starting experience in the NFL. He also has some rushing upside. If you've played preseason DFS, we have used his name in the past throughout the last few years as he's traveled around the league. Minimum price quarterback here, $4,000 on DraftKings, $6,000 over on FanDuel. Going to be the most popular play at the position, so I think completely acceptable to use him in your low-risk lineups. The other quarterbacks that are going to be popular in low risk here on DraftKings, we have Kyler Murray with his rushing upside. Arizona's been eliminated for weeks, but they are still using normal playing time, normal volume for all their players, so we're not expecting anything different in the final game of the campaign here. So Kyler Murray also viable in low-risk contests. But as I mentioned, hopping back over to FanDuel, we've got Goff, we've got Sam Darnold. Our model slightly prefers Goff straight up, and Goff is also $200 cheaper than Sam Darnold, just to be aware of that here. So we're going to go with Dobbs. We've got another receiver spot, got another flex spot. I think you want to fill that with another running back play. That's probably where you put like Bucky Irving or Bijan Robinson. At defense this week, looking at our model, we've got the Packers are going to be the most popular defense on the main slate. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be right behind them. On DraftKings, we've got the Denver Broncos and the Bills that are going to be very popular. And we have the Titans and the Seahawks that are going to be very popular on FanDuel. So all of these defenses are the defense you should probably use in your low-risk lineups. You see I've got the Titans here plugged in on FanDuel just because they've got a cheap price. And then we'll plug in the Packers here just for the sake of the argument, $3,400 here against the Bears, $6,500 per player remaining. Definitely enough here to get things done based off of all of the plays that we've talked about on this slate for low-risk contests. High-risk contests this week. With so many games available, this is a great slate to stick to our general guidelines, 3-1 game stacks. With 13 games on DraftKings, 14 games on FanDuel, I think you can drop down to 2-1, maybe 2-0 in certain spots here. Typical spots for that, we use mobile quarterbacks where we don't need as many pass catchers because they're going to rack up some points in the running game. Lower total games, maybe use less pieces. Bigger spreads like Tampa Bay favored by 14, Denver favored by 11, Green Bay favored by 10.5. Probably good examples of when you don't want to use a bring back in your lineups. So just keep all of these things in mind as you are building for the final week of the regular season. On DraftKings, my favorite stack is going to be Arizona and San Francisco. I think we can go with Kyler Murray here. We already know that Trey McBride is going to be very popular. We already know that Michael Carter is going to be very popular at running back, and we already know that Juwan Jennings is going to be very popular at receiver. So in a high-risk contest, again, this is going to be pretty close to the low-risk lineup, but I think you can play what we call modified cash here in high risk with these guys and play some low-owned pass catchers, maybe low-owned defense, some low-owned running backs in good spots. Talked about all those guys at the beginning of the video to get a little bit different on this slate. On FanDuel, you playing this stack, San Francisco and Arizona, is going to be a little bit lower owned because everybody is going to be playing Minnesota and Detroit. So just keep that in mind here. Other things that the field will be interested in, obviously if Michael Evans is going to be extremely popular, then the field is going to take a look at getting Baker Mayfield in there for a Tampa Bay stack. This is an example of a game where I don't think you need to bring back because the Bucs are favored by 2 touchdowns. I'm not interested in stacking Bo Nix against the Chiefs here. It's outside of the top of my projections, but obviously we can get to Nix, we can get to Cortland Sutton, who also has a little bit of an incentive situation going on here. He's like 82 yards away from a roster bonus. Get him in here with Bo Nix. That's probably the best way to stack Denver. I would just do a 2-0. I wouldn't necessarily mess with the Kansas City side. However, we do have another running back that's going to see a lot of opportunity in Carson Steele, with both Pacheco and Kareem Hunt expected to miss the game. So Denver is viable looking at the spread and the total there. The Lions, the Falcons are going to have one of the higher total, or they do have one of the higher totals on this slate. So Michael Penix, Drake London, you can get those guys into your lineups as another high risk option. A little bit off the beaten path here, a team with some motivation to win. We have Miami against the Jets. We're expecting Tua to sit, so Tyler Huntley, kind of a hold your nose play, but you can play Tyreek Hill with him. That's another stack that's possible. The spread on this game a little tighter, so you can use either Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson as a bringback as well if you're doing something like that. Here, there's so much at play here in Week 18. It's really hard to go over everything in one 15-minute video. So I encourage you to read the Daily Plug, where we've gone over all of the injuries on this slate. We've gone over all of the players that are resting, and we've spelled out the top plays at every position like we do every single week. And we've gone over how to attack the slate on both DraftKings and FanDuel. FanDuel having access to the best game environment on the slate in prime time basically makes FanDuel a completely different game environment here in week number 18. I want to thank each of you for watching each of these videos every single week. For those of you that have been with us throughout the entire season, love putting these videos for you week in and week out. This is going to do it for me for the regular season. For the playoff slates, I would expect you guys to be able to see a lot more content for short slates from Brian and Jack on this channel. They did a great job breaking down the final short slate of the regular season for Week 18 Saturday. And I would expect them to be back in force next week to talk about wildcard round. We're going to have some showdowns in the playoffs that Brian will talk about. We're obviously going to give you content all the way up through the Super Bowl in February. So stay tuned. We've still got plenty of football content here for the rest of the season, but that's it for me for the regular season, guys. Good luck in Week 18, and I will talk to you soon.